There's a crisis in this country, in our own backyards. It takes a life every 4 hours, and no one talks about it. Arming our troops won't keep us safe, and building a wall won't stop it. The clock keeps ticking, and kids keep dying. According to the Mental Health Association in New York State, 1 in 12 high school students has attempted suicide. That doesn't surprise me because I was one of those 12. What absolutely baffles me is that suicide is still a problem. The worst part is that suicide is preventable. We can prevent this from happening 100%. According to the CDC, in 2016, there were a little less than 500 suicides for ages 10 to 14 years old. For ages 15 to 24, that number was almost 6,000. For ages 25 to 34, it was a little over 7,000. Why does that number increase as we grow older? What are we working towards if pain, suffering, and death only grow as we do? What does this mean for our future, and why are we not more focused on this?
41% of people identifying as transgender have reported making a suicide attempt. With everything that's going on in Washington, how does this bode for their future?
I mean, right now I'm taking a class where we talk a lot about this, and I think, honestly, if something doesn't happen, it's just going to keep getting worse because these type of laws invalidate a lot of people's identities, and I know that trans people in general are at risk for suicide anyways, so some sort of legislation, social justice movement has to happen, because it's just going to get worse.
It's incredibly difficult to watch people that are supposed to be leaders talking about who you are in a fashion that's both disrespectful and telling you that you aren't enough, that who you are isn't right. And when the people who are supposed to be your leaders, the people that you're supposed to look up to count on, aren't there and aren't standing up for who you are, it's heartbreaking, because if they aren't standing up for who you are, who will? And with that being said, we have to take it upon ourselves to stand up for each other. If our leaders aren't going to do it, we can't count on them to do it. If they do it, it's wonderful. But we have to do it ourselves. We can't just wait for someone to tell us to do it. We have to be there for each other.
So I would say that it does not bode well for the future of trans individuals in terms of the amount of stigma they will experience, or increased stigma they will experience because of the acts of Washington, as well as legally. They may have more difficulties accessing the kind of care that they need, because it limits their insurance accessibility, it limits their accessibility to services that are affirming of trans individuals and competent in treating them in the way that they need to be treated.
I feel like this issue is only going to get worse given what Washington is doing. They created language that basically establishes that transgendered individuals are lying or mentally ill, and I feel like if almost half of transgendered individuals have already made a suicide attempt, the attempts and the ideations along with it are going to go up a lot, and I think that concerns me a lot.
There are approximately 123 suicides per day. What can we do as a nation to change that?
So much. That is so much. I think as a nation, people, honestly, it's just education. educate people and have them become more knowledgeable. I know that now, like, mental health awareness is starting to become a bigger topic. However, and in the past it was hidden and people didn't really want to accept the fact that it exists as much as it does today. However, I think that educating the young about it and what can be done to prevent it, to show the signs of it, especially teachers who are seeing it, also parents who don't really pay attention to their kids as much, and also just companions and peers.
You know that suicide claims one life every 4 hours. How does that make you feel?
I didn't know it was every 4 hours statistically, but I know that I'm not really surprised because we don't value mental health very much as a society, and we just kind of keep pushing and pushing and pushing and kind of not stopping. There's a lot of suffering in the world and it's not really paid attention to. It is surprising, but in a way it's not surprising when you think about it, because nobody likes to pay attention to mental health or admit that they have mental health issues and even seek help, and there's not that many resources.
Suicide costs the U.S. $69 billion annually. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that is a crazy amount of money, but I think that actually more should be put into suicide awareness, because people don't really know too much about it and they're struggling with it, and there's just not enough information going around, and people usually put down people with mental health issues. They say, if they don't understand it themselves, they say, oh, it's not such a big deal, like such as depression, anxiety. They don't know what it's really like. So I actually think that more should be put towards educating people about it.
There's so many factors, which is why it's often difficult to figure out how to prevent numbers being so high or there being numbers at all. Who you're surrounded by is one thing. What you're surrounding yourself with via social media, your intake, all of that is part of your environment and affects the way you process the world. And on top of that, you've got mountains of stress, whether it be from your home or from your schoolwork, and all those factors can tie back into environment, and it's really sad.
1 in 12 high schoolers has attempted suicide. What does that mean for this population?
I mean, we weren't there that long ago. I know that when I was in high school, it's just a really hard time, and a lot of people are bullied. A lot of people don't really know their identities. It's just a really vulnerable time. Adolescence kind of sucks. But I feel like if you can make it through that, it gets better.